Hello. So happy to have everyone on online today for today's webinar, the Foundation Maps for Community Foundations webinar. It looks like we're going to have a great turnout, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in here. A couple of really quick housekeeping items that I want to mention right up front. This session is being recorded, so if you have any colleagues that couldn't join us this afternoon or this morning, depending on which time zone you're in, you can definitely feel free to let them know that there will be a recording available very soon, and that we will email that link to folks. And it will also be posted on the Foundation Maps webinar webpage, which I can show you guys in a few minutes. Another item that I need to mention is that you can ask questions at any time using the Q&A box on the side of your screen. So you can just go ahead and type in your questions at any time. There will be a Q&A session at the end. So, just feel free to keep them coming, and we're going to address as many of them as we can at the conclusion of the webinar. So I want to once again thank everyone for joining us today. And my name is, if we can get to the next slide, there we go, David Rosado. I am the Member Services Manager for CF Insights here at Foundation Center. I have actually been with Foundation Center since 2008, and I started as someone who worked with a lot of the data that you're going to see today. So, I've worked on a lot of the data that you're going to see for quite a bit. But right now, I work on the CF Insights platform, which is another service of Foundation Center. And just if I can give the quickest plug for CF Insights, what we do is we work with community foundations in the United States by providing financial and operational benchmarking. We also report on overall trends that are happening in the field. And for community foundations that we work with one-on-one, we do provide some custom benchmarking as well. So if that's something that you want to learn more about, you can feel free to go to cfinsights.org, or you can email me. My email address is right there on that slide, and I'm going to go ahead and show my contact information again at the end. But we're not here to talk about CF Insights, we're here to talk about Foundation Maps. So what I'm going to do is switch away from this PowerPoint to the browser. And this is essentially going to be a live demo. This is, or not essentially, it is going to be a live demo. I'm going to take you through the features of Foundation Maps, what all is available to folks who use the platform. It's going to be I'm going to be jumping through different data visualizations as well that are all housed in the Foundation Maps platform. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and log in. So, so the other thing I wanted to mention too is while I will be giving an overall tour of Foundation Maps, I'm also going to kind of contextualize what the different features do with regard to helping community foundations strategize their own grant making, learn a little bit more about the landscape of grant making in their area or for a specific subject area. So when you first log in, Foundation Maps gives you a very handy pop-up note here that allows you to just get a quick sense for everything that's available and that's brand new to the platform. I also, and actually, let me go ahead and make this full screen so you have a better view. So it just gives you a quick breakdown of any new, any new features. And once you click out of that, you get the full map view. It shows the entire world, and this is essentially going to be the entire universe of all of the grants data that we house at Foundation Center. So you can see here if nothing is filtered down at all, so we have 6.2 million grants. That is actual grant transactions in the database that total $1.4 trillion in value. We have nearly 73,000 funders and about 466,000 recipients in the database. Just to kind of orient you to where different elements are on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and kind of run through them very quickly, and then we'll look at them in more detail a little bit later. But the default view is the map view, which makes sense given the name of the platform. But you get to see right away just where grant making is going. you can see a little bit more detail about individual funders, individual recipients, or individual grant transactions in the list view here. We have an advanced search, which I'll get into later, which is a little bit more powerful than what you see up top here. We have charts that look at grant-making trends over time, pathways that identify relationships between funders and different recipients, constellations, which is another kind of top-down view of the universe of grant-making, depending on which filters you identify, and saved searches, which is super, super helpful and allows you to start embark on a new search, one time, save your search, and then you can go right back and continue on, at a later time. So at the top here, you can see the different filters. One thing I want to mention before I even get to the specific filters up top is that you see here there is a Your Selections bar that shows you which filters you've applied. This is helpful for a couple of reasons. One is that, of course, if you apply many filters, it'd be easy to lose track of which ones you've been using. So you can see them all right here. It also allows you to clear out any individual filter or all of them at once by clicking on any one of them or just clicking Clear All. There is also a Save button here, which as I just mentioned, allows you to save the search that you're currently running, and then you can get back to it by going to Save Searches next time you sign on. So today we're going to be focusing on community foundations. That's going to be the lens through which we look at the platform. And we're going to go ahead and zoom in on that type of funder specifically. And actually, I skipped ahead slightly, sorry. I want to just make sure that you get the mid-scope of the different filters that we have. So the first filter here in the upper left-hand corner allows you to see all of our data in three main ways. This is the recipient view. The recipients are signified by these different orange bubbles. It shows a concentration of funding by recipients in a specific area around the world. So if you hover over any of them, so right here I'm going to look at the United States, and then you click any of them, let me move the map slightly, a little pop-up appears that shows you the total funding in a specific area. So right here we're focusing on the United States. There's a large concentration of recipients. We have about 334,000 recipients. As I mentioned, they have the total dollar amount, the total number of grants, and then you can go in and actually click any of these links to give you more detail on any one of these three facets. Do I want to see the list of funders that are operating in the United States? Do I want to see a list of recipients who are receiving funding in the United States, or do I want to see individual grants? And I will show you what those all lead to in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and close it out. Another view here is, so this is by recipients. Another view here is funders. You see how the bubbles all turn this kind of teal color? This is the concentration of where funders are located around the world. So again, I'm going to click on the United States, and it's going to show you essentially the same data in that pop-up, but you're seeing with that teal bubble a concentration of funders based on location, and so there's a large concentration of funders that are located in the United States. Lastly, we have area served. And instead of bubbles, what we're seeing is color-coded shading. And the color-coded shading is going to show where dollars are going around the world. So this is a full a full world view, so the default scale is going to be country. But as we dig a little bit deeper into the United States more specifically, you're going to see that there will be other options added to the geoscale box here on the left-hand side. So let's go back to recipient view, which is kind of the default view, so to speak. You can search by specific location. So if you start typing in this box, I want to type United States. The platform will actually autocomplete what you're typing. So, you know, I typed in the United States in its entirety, but if I delete a few characters here, it'll still know what I'm trying to look for. At the top, the results are going to be the most, you know, the best matches, and then further down, it tries to figure out what some other matches might be based on what you've typed so far. Subject area allows you to filter grant making by a specific subject area or issue area. You can search by subject areas in two different ways. You can either start typing into this box, and let's say that I want to search for the arts. It'll autocomplete again, and you'll see here that we have arts and culture, and then some more specific subject areas that are kind of a more specific view of different arts and culture funding. So folk arts, performing arts, public arts, visual arts, and so on. Another way you can do this is by clicking Browse All Subjects right above there. And what it allows you to do is see our entire, what we call the philanthropy classification system, which is essentially our taxonomy that allows us to index grant making by specific subject area. So if I wanted to go into arts, I can either click this checkbox right here and see all arts funding, or if I wanted to go and dig a little bit deeper into a specific issue area within arts funding, I can click anywhere in that header there, and I'm taken to more specific issue areas under arts. There is a hierarchy here, so arts and culture is a pretty wide category. Humanities is under arts and culture, but if I click that, I get different subject areas that are within humanities. So again, this is based on the philanthropy classification system, which is you know, an overall taxonomy that takes a look at all grant making. If you want to learn more about the taxonomy itself, you will want to go to taxonomy.foundationcenter.org. And that is where you can download the entire taxonomy, see exactly you know, the different terms that we use and some definitions as well. But otherwise, you can just go in and do some exploring here right on Foundation Maps. And finally here on the right-hand side, this is where I was headed to earlier when I jumped ahead a little bit by mistake, but essentially these are additional filters by which you can search grant making around the world. So we have the population served, a support strategy. So is this a continuing support grant? Is this general operating support? Is this capacity building? You can actually enter an organization name. So again, if I wanted to start typing a specific name of an organization, you can start typing, you know, New York, for instance, and then you can see different different organizations, whether it be a funder or a recipient, that have that name. You can filter by specific grant years. Foundation Maps goes back as far as 2006, and as you can see, we have some grant-making data for 2017 if it's available. We have a little bit more for 2016, but our most recent complete year of data, which is to say a comprehensive data set, is from 2014, and we're currently working on 2015 as well. But there is some data that's coming in from 2016 and from this year as well. We have transaction types, so are they a cash grant? Are they matching gifts? Are they in-kind gifts? Funder types, which I'm going to, this is where I was headed to more specifically. I'm going to use that in just a second to look at community foundations specifically. But we have corporate foundations, independent foundations, operating foundations, public charities. And then filter by keyword, which allows you to search grant-making data by something that might be a little bit more specific than what our taxonomy would show. So if there's a specific cause that you want to look for or a specific keyword, you can type that in there and it will try to find you some matches for that keyword. Here is a checkbox that basically is on by default, but you could shut it off if you uncheck that. Now what we've done is we've filtered out you know, the federal government's funding, so the United States federal government specifically. That is a layer that's loaded by default, but if you want to get in here and look at grant making by foundations and not the federal government of the United States, you can go ahead and click that, and it shuts right off. And now we have the same universe, but without those funders specifically. So let's go ahead and select Community Foundation. And let's zoom in more specifically on the United States. It takes a second to refresh every time you move the map, anytime you zoom in, anytime you type a new facet, so whether it be a location or a subject area or a population served or anything else, the map will refresh and it'll show you the data that matches those specific filters. So right here, what you're looking at is the United States specifically and community foundations specifically that operate within the United States. Those orange bubbles, one more time, are the concentration of recipients around the United States. So if we went ahead and switched to one of those other views, now we're looking at the funders and the geo areas served. And so again, you see the concentration very quickly. We're zoomed in a little bit so you don't get to see Alaska, so let's go ahead and, I guess there's no kind of middle tier zoom. So I'm zooming up pretty far here, but you have the contiguous 48 states, Alaska up here, and Hawaii, there you go, Hawaii right there. So let's zoom in a little bit more to show you a little bit more about how the geoscale works. So now I'm looking at area served. This is the concentration of funding depending on specifically where the grant dollars are going, or what the where the actual work is being done. So now that we're zoomed in on the United States, we have an additional geoscale option here on the left-hand side. We can either view it by country, which isn't going to be that helpful since we're only looking at the United States. So since we're only looking at the United States, it's always going to, it's going to have the highest concentration of funding. But if we switch to state, now you can see by state the concentration of funding. And this actually leads me to another facet of this map view that I can mention right now actually, is the legend in the lower left-hand corner. The legend is great because it basically refreshes along with whatever you're looking at. So right now we're looking at the concentration of funding by area served, and that legend is going to show you, based on the shading, the dollar amount range, basically, that corresponds to the different shades of green. And so, it stands to reason that we're looking at, the darker states are going to show higher concentrations of funding, and the lighter shades of green are going to show a smaller concentration of funding. But if we just switch back to the recipient view very quickly, now you see that legend shows you what the bubbles mean. So the number of recipients that are basically within a concentrated bubble, this is a large bubble, we're looking at California, so it corresponds to the largest bubble in the legend, and we have more than 500 recipients in that area. But for the purposes of this specific piece of the demonstration, let's jump back to the geoscale. And so as I mentioned, since we're in the United States, we have the country and state. But let's say I wanted to zoom in further. I want to look at New York, the state of New York, not the city of New York, which is what the first option is here. Now this is the state of New York. The default view is going to be the state. So what you're seeing is all of the funding by community foundations that serve New York State. But I can change the geoscale to the county. And now we see concentrations of funding by county. We have Kings County, which is where I'm from, down there in Brooklyn. You see Monroe County also has a high concentration. We have Tompkins County, somewhere in the middle there, and then some of the lighter shaded areas. Or we can go by city. And now you're looking at, specifically by city, the geo area served for grant making, and how concentrated it is toward different cities. So you have Syracuse here, Rochester's a little bit larger, Manhattan is going to be larger still, Saratoga Springs. You can go ahead and click any of these and see some more specific details. So if I click on Saratoga Springs, we have 313 grants for $2.1 million from 36 funders to 37 recipients. If I click Manhattan with a larger bubble, the numbers are going to be naturally higher. All right, so let's zoom back out to the United States. And I will show funding by issue area. Let's go back to the recipient view here, and let's look for something very general first, arts and culture. So again, we have, this is the grant making that is being done in support of arts and culture in the United States. The concentration of recipients and their locations. And the great thing about these selections here is, you know, I've been looking at community foundations in the United States funding arts and culture. You can absolutely look at more than one subject at once. So if I want to look at arts and culture, but I also want to see the environment, funding to support the environment, you can go ahead and add that. So these are, this is grant making in support of either arts and culture or the environment. But if I wanted to eliminate one of those, just click that X, and then it refreshes right back. It goes back to just looking at arts and culture. All right, so that is basically how all the filtering works. So let's dig in a little bit deeper and get a little bit more specific. Let's just choose, let's say, the Greater New Orleans Foundation. And while they do grant make, or they, you know, their reach does cover most of the United States, I want to focus more specifically on the New Orleans area. I'm actually going to type in Louisiana generally, and we'll do some zooming in from there, because they do. There's definitely some funding across the state of Louisiana, but I kind of want to see, or I should say, you know, most of it's going to be concentrated in Orleans Parish, but you know, I want to go ahead and type Louisiana and then zoom in from there so I could see some of the areas that aren't in the parish proper, but are somewhat nearby. So if I wanted to see the issue areas that they support, but I don't want to focus in on a specific issue area, it's very easy to do that. And that takes us to another one of these views here on the left-hand side. Let's go ahead and click Charts here on the left-hand side. And now we see different charts that that depict their funding over time. So this is a line graph that shows their funding over the last, well, not over the last 10 years, but going from 2006 to 2014. And then this dotted line kind of, it depicts data collection that is not complete, but you know, the data that we do have so far is being depicted there. So that's just in total grant making dollars. This is just a bar chart. It shows the same data, but we can definitely get to a more detailed view, which I will show in a second. Here we go. This is a distribution chart, and it's a great way, it's a quick way to see the different issue areas that the foundation is funding. And this is what we call a windrows chart, but it basically just shows, you know, by issue area, how much funding is going from this specific foundation to that issue area. So you see education is their most funded subject area, about $37 million. You have community and economic development, I guess in second place here, $27 million, and then we have environment at $22 million. And then again, you can see more detail, which I will get to right after this view. But to see the specific grant transactions that are being made from Greater New Orleans Foundation in support of, for instance, the environment. But if I want to dig in a little bit deeper, I'm curious, okay, so they support the, they do funding that in support of the environment, but I want to see exactly, where that money's going and what, more specifically, with regards to the environment they're funding. If you click any of those slices in the Windrose chart, it takes you to the next level of subject area. So now this is only their environmental funding. And we could see that they have $3.6 million toward the care of domesticated animals, $1.2 million in support of biodiversity, and the largest chunk here, natural resources, at about $17 million. But I want to click that and get even more specific. The next level, you can see natural resources. This is all funding that's specifically toward natural resources, and we can see that they do some funding in support of energy, in support of land resources, and in support of water resources. So you can kind of keep digging a little bit deeper. You can kind of imagine it as drilling down, especially with this top-down view. But if you go ahead and click that, and you get to a level of funding, oh, there was one more level. So within that category, we have funding in support of wetlands, specifically rivers and lakes, oceans and coastal waters. And so I think this is a good opportunity to show these details. So whenever one of these pop-ups appear, you can click to see the specific details. So if I want to see the list of recipients that are being supported in support of the wetlands, in Louisiana by the Greater New Orleans Foundation, I can click that, and this list pops up that shows me the different recipients by name, the dollar value of the grants that have been given in support of that specific recipient, and the number of grants. If I click on the details button here on the right-hand side, I can get even more specific. So I'm curious to know what grants were given to America's Wetland Foundation by the Greater New Orleans Foundation. And this is giving you the list of actual grant transactions between funder and recipient. All of these columns are sortable, so as you just saw while I was speaking, I sorted it by year, so I'm looking at the very latest, 2016. And then you could get some details on the grant itself. So the total amount is $138,000. The program area is environment. If there's related population served information or support strategy or a specific geo area served, that is also going to appear on that grant detail screen. So let's go ahead and look at the trend chart here. And I want to look at a specific subject area. So this, as I mentioned, this trend chart takes a look at all of their grants for any issue area over the years. But I kind of want to compare their funding to different subject areas. So let's get pretty specific. Education's good, but I want to see specifically their funding toward charter schools. I want to see their funding towards arts education. And there you go. So if I kept adding additional subject areas, this chart would just get more and more crowded with different with new lines here. But these two charts show the total dollar of the grants, as mentioned before, and the total number of grants. You can hover over any of these particular years to see a comparison between the two subject areas. So in 2012, we see charter school education to the tune of about close to $800,000, and about $400,000 went towards arts education. And it works the same way for the total number of grants on the right-hand side. All right. So that digs a little bit deeper. I'm going to go ahead and take us back to the United States and a general view of the overall map. So if I was the Greater New Orleans Community Foundation and I wanted to go, actually let's clear that out as well, and I wanted to see funding that went toward charter schools in Louisiana that are not from my foundation, that are from any foundation actually, so let's go ahead and clear community foundations. You can do that very quickly. Charter schools, oops. Let's go ahead and dig a little deeper. Let's go and jump to New Orleans specifically. All right. So now that we're looking at New Orleans and we're looking at the overall landscape of charter school education in the city by any type of foundation, regardless of their name or a type of foundation. Whoops, I clicked that a little quickly. Here's the map, so you can see the concentration of recipients. But if I want to see the list of funders who support this in the area, I can click the list button here on the left-hand side, and the default view is going to be funders. So you can see the name of the funder, where the funder is located by city and state, the value of the grants that they've given in support of charter school education, and the number of grants that they gave. If I wanted to see the recipients, or actually before I even get there, this is sorted by the dollar value of grants, so you can see the funder name, and then these are the funders that have given the most in support of charter school education to New Orleans in that area, or since 2006. If I wanted to see the recipients that have received the most funding, you would just click recipients, and it's kind of the same view, except now instead of funders, we're looking at recipient names. So we see that New Schools for New Orleans received about $36 million in grant money, or about 141 grants. If I want to see the list of actual grant transactions, that's here too. So this is sorted by the largest grant. So the largest grant went to New Schools for New Orleans from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But if I want to see the most recent grants, you can go ahead and just click that, the year column, sorted by year, and now you're looking at 2016. So then, if I was with the Greater New Orleans Community Foundation and I wanted to see who else supports charter schools in the area, and I was kind of curious to see the overall landscape, this is the best way to do it. You're looking at the list here and you're looking at other funders. Are they, how active are they in funding charter schools in New Orleans? You can go ahead and click that by specific funder. So again, we're looking at the Gates Foundation in support of charter schools in the area. And then you can see what other funders may be natural collaborators in a specific space. All right, moving on. Let's take another example here. Let's go back to the map first. I want to take a look at the New York Community Trust. And I'm kind of curious to learn what they have done, their funding in support of refugees. So let's go ahead and click the New York Community Trust. Let's drill down here. You can see we have social and economic status, immigrants and migrants, and there we go, refugees and displaced people. And let's zoom in more specifically on New York City. So you can see their funding in support of refugees. In New York City, we have 286 grants, $3.1 million, one funder, because we're only looking at the New York Community Trust, and 16 recipients. But I want to see how connected I am to other organizations that are supporting refugees in New York City as well. There's a way you can do that. You can basically see if there are organizations that are supporting the same recipients that you are in two different ways. The first one I'm going to demonstrate here is Pathways. This is a great way to basically see the journey of dollars from funder to recipient. And you can also see what other funders are making grants to the same recipients that your foundation is. So for instance, this is the New York Community Trust here on the left-hand side. These are grant dollars in support of 3 specific organizations that support refugees. We can see other recipients by clicking next. It just refreshes the page with another set of recipients. But if I wanted to go ahead and follow the flow of dollars from the New York Community Trust to the New York Immigration Coalition, you can then see that there are three other funders here in the middle that support the New York Immigration Coalition. So the Altman Foundation, NEO Philanthropy, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, they all support the New York Immigration Coalition. If anything on the screen is a little bit tough to see, so there's a little bit of a jumble here, you can actually move any of these elements around on screen. I want to see this specifically. And you can go ahead and kind of isolate these guys and get a better view. Whoops, I wanted to move them up. So now you can kind of see the overlap of funding to specific organizations, and again, you get an idea of who else is supporting the same causes or the same recipients. And it helps you kind of see a cross-section of funding, basically. If I wanted to see other recipients that I support in support of refugees, I can go ahead and click Next. The page will refresh, and now we see a new set of recipients here. And once again, you see that cross-section of funding. Another way you can see this is just below that. This is called constellations. This is an overall view of how constellations work, but I'm going to go ahead and actually, this is a live demo here, so I can just dig in and show you exactly how it works. So this is constellations, and essentially what I'm looking at here is the New York Community Trust in support of refugees in New York City, and then you can see this is my foundation. I'm with the New York Community Trust, and I can see the different recipients that I support and the extent to which I support them based on the size of the bubbles. So if I click any of the bubbles, now you're seeing for the International Rescue Committee, the New York Community Trust gave 153 grants for $613,000. But I know what my own funding, I know my own funding. I'm with the New York Community Trust. I want to see who else is doing the same funding in the same area in support of the same population. So a couple of things I want to mention about this view. You'll see that some of the organizations are named and some are not. The organizations that are named on screen are the 10 organizations that are the most central to this network. This is a great way to see a funding network, essentially. So the International Rescue Committee is a recipient. They have a larger bubble since they receive more funding, and they receive funding from all of these different foundations, all these different funders. But if I'm the New York Community Trust and I'm curious to know which organizations are doing this kind of work or are helping refugees in New York City that are not receiving quite the same level of funding, they're out here. You can see that they're not very central to this network. They're off on their own. So the World Policy Institute has only one funder. We have the Committee Against Anti-Asian Violence off here on the side. And they're just kind of floating out there. So you can very quickly see what organizations might be doing this kind of work that are kind of in their own funding silo, so to speak. And that might be something that you would want to look into. Another example I want to show, which will use this view, but will actually go beyond this. Oops, is Brooklyn Community Foundation. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. I don't want to look at all of New York City. I want to look at Brooklyn, the borough of Brooklyn. And I'm going to change issue area. Actually, let me mention first that if I have no subject area filters whatsoever applied, so this is all of Brooklyn Community Foundation, all of its recipients here, all around it. And actually, before I apply any subject area filters, I want to let you know that there's another view here, which I almost failed to mention. I apologize. But if you want to see a listing of the organizations that are here, because this might be a little bit tough to see, you can zoom in, but I want to see the list of organizations. There is a tabular view here on the left. So if I click that, now all of a sudden you're seeing the organizations that are either central or not very central to this network. Since I'm only looking at one funder, that is the Brooklyn Community Foundation, it's the only organization that's going to be central to this network because it's the only organization funding all of these recipients. But it's at the top here, and then you can see more details about any of these other organizations. And you can see if I hover over any individual one, you can see the link between funder and recipient. I can keep scrolling down. All right, so that's the way the tabular view works. I'm going to go ahead and look into a specific subject area. Let's go to public safety. And again, we're only looking at Brooklyn Community Foundation, but I'm curious to know what other funders are giving to recipients in Brooklyn in support of public safety. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that selection of Brooklyn Community Foundation. This is going to take a few seconds to refresh. And here you go, once again. We see the organizations that are very central to this network. The New York Community Trust is very central, which means that they have 25 different connections, either to other recipients or other funders. The most connected, I guess, if you want to say it that way, the most connected recipient is the Center for Alternative Sentencing and Employment Services. They're very central because they have 19 connections. They are a recipient that receive funding from 19 different funders, so you can see that right there. So we can see the organizations that are receiving the most funding. That's very obvious, but again, I want to see the organizations that might not be. And that's something else to, here we go, something else to consider when there we go, when looking up any potential organizations that might benefit from increased funding here. So that's constellations. I'm actually going to go back to the map itself, and I want to show one more really helpful tool. I'm curious to know what my funding looks like. Let's go back to Brooklyn Community Foundation. What my funding looks like in South Brooklyn specifically. But if I try to type in South Brooklyn, it doesn't come up as a location here because it's not a specific named place. But I think of South Brooklyn as a collection of different neighborhoods. So instead of using the location search, there's this really nifty, let me zoom in a little bit more. There's this really helpful polygon tool here on the right-hand side. What the polygon tool allows you to do is draw a shape around a very specific area, and then you can see the funding in that area. So I'm curious to know about Middle South to South Brooklyn. What I would do there is just click here, draw a kind of square rectangle here that covers the South Brooklyn area, and now I'm looking at public safety funding in South Brooklyn in the area that I drew. You can change the shape of your polygon by just dragging any of its corners anywhere. You can do that. Click Save here. Or you can get rid of it by clicking that trash can. But let's get rid of the public safety filter. And now I'm looking at all of Brooklyn Community Foundation's funding in South Brooklyn in total. But there is, and actually I said there was one more tool earlier. This is the one more tool. There is actually one more here. On the bottom, I want to see how my funding cross-references to demographic information from the census. So you can click this tab here on the bottom. It will open up U.S. demographics, and you can actually show a layer on the map that that displays the concentration of these specific aspects of your population. So if you want to see white non-Hispanic, if you want to see the black population or the Asian population, you want to see high school graduates. If you want to see the median age estimate or the median household income, you can do that. So now I'm clicking the median household income. This will take a few seconds to refresh, but it's going to pull in data from the census. And it will show you the median household income. So we see this blue color. There are differing intensities here around the map. I don't really quite know what that means. I'm going to go ahead and click my legend. So the legend is showing the bubbles, which is where the concentration of recipients are. But now you see the median household income is added on as an additional legend facet. So if the median household income is under $38,000-ish, you can see that on the map with these lighter color areas. The darker shaded areas are $132,000 or $132,500 to $350,000. You can see the pockets of where the median income is that high. But I'm curious to see the concentration of people of color. And you can see how it refreshes. So from the census, you can see concentrations of people of color around Brooklyn. And further down the screen, this should refresh. It is currently not refreshing. Oh, yeah, the trials and tribulations of a live demo. There is an additional section that should be loaded here. Maybe it's just taking a little while to load in the background. But what it essentially shows is, based on census information, the trend line of the population over time. So you can see there's a line graph that shows one line showing the total population over time from the census prior to 2010 and 2010, and then an estimate of what it might look like in 2018. And it also shows different other aspects of the population, so people of color, the Asian population, and it does show that trend line here underneath. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be loading at this very second. So anyhow, let's go ahead and move the map slightly. And then you can see, there are pockets where there are more people of color. Then you can see how that I'll stick general here, how that kind of crosses with where your funding is going in support of different ethnic groups. So you see here high concentration of people of color, and then there's some funding, 24 grants in this area from Brooklyn Community Foundation in support of different ethnic groups. Or rather, sorry, let's click the bubble itself. So now you can see the funding for ethnic groups in that area. Here's another high concentration area, and you can see 8 grants, $138,000. You can do that by clicking, you can also see a similar cross-section by clicking poverty, so you can see where the poverty level is a little bit higher, and then you can see the Community Foundation's funding in support of economically disadvantaged people. Let's zoom out a little bit. It gives you a little bit of a better view. So then if I'm at the Community Foundation and I could kind of see the different pockets of where poverty levels are a little bit higher, I mean, is this something that I want to look into? Are there organizations that might be working in certain areas that help this population that I might want to do some research on? So it's a great way to do that kind of research. It takes a look at your current funding and where you might want to expand. So because the hour is almost over. So I think I'm going to stop the demo here. I think I've covered all of the different aspects. I had another example, but that's quite all right. Let's go ahead and open it up to questions.
All right, so we have some questions here for you, David. Let's start at the top, and this is Sally asking just a simple question. Is this a free service, or do you have to have a professional membership to access it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Foundation Maps is a paid service. However, Foundation Maps also has a trial. So you can go to maps.foundationcenter.org, and if you are a first-time visitor, there is a button right on the left-hand side, which I can actually show, that allows you to sign up for a free trial. So you can try it free. There are different pricing tiers. There is the base level of Foundation Maps that allows you to get the full map view as well as the full list view, and advanced search as well, which I did not get to. Let's just click into that so you can just see it while I talk about it. So there's the advanced search. You can search through different facets of the database at once. But essentially, the base level gives you access to these first 3, and the professional tier allows you to access the demographic information, the pathways, the constellations, and that is the Foundation Maps Professional tier, which is what we were demoing today. And also, just to quickly, if you want to learn more about the pricing, there is a link there, right at the top of the main Foundation Maps website, so you can click that and get more information.
All right, here's a little lengthier question from Sonia. My understanding is that you do not include all community foundation grants in your database, and instead traditionally have only included discretionary grants along with some donor-advised grants. Is this still the case?
That is no longer the case. Thanks, Sonia, for that question. Yeah, that used to be the case. We used to basically focus on discretionary grants for the most part. There was a little bit more of a focus on the grant seeker. So if there was somebody who was looking for discretionary granting from foundations, it was a little bit of an easier an easier road for them to do that research because it allowed them to decide, where the discretionary funding could be coming from. We have since, a few years ago, we stopped doing that, so we actually do collect grants from all fund types, as we have started to branch out and basically make these available to funders as well to inform their own grant-making efforts. But Sonia, there is a little bit more to that, but I can definitely reach back out to you for us to talk more about that. If you do report your own grants data, we could talk about that in more detail.
All right, let's jump down to a good question from Carol here. Are there any foundations that are not included in the data yet, say new ones? Is there a way to request addition of data for organizations that may not currently be included?
That is a great question. So right now we have a complete data set on 2014. So organizations that basically started after 2014 may not be in there. If there are organizations that are supported by foundations that have basically gotten started after that, they will be added to the database as we add their grant-making data. What I will say is that the Foundation Maps data does get refreshed every week. So if you visit today, we have this set of data. If you visit next week, there will invariably be new data pushed in there. So we have data on new recipients and new foundations added all the time.
All right, and just another follow-up from her. Does Foundation Maps replace the need for Foundation Directory Online?
No, yeah, that's a great question. Foundation Maps is something that you can use in tandem with Foundation Directory Online. A lot of the data does overlap, but Foundation Directory Online allows you to get, it allows you to do different types of searching that allows you to search for different facets of data. You can learn more about different funders that way, I believe. So if you use Foundation Directory Online, you can go ahead and learn more about the the staffing structure and their boards, their specific programs that they might operate beyond their grant making, whereas Foundation Maps is going to be more focused on the grant making aspect of it. So there are different uses for each. There is definitely some overlap, but one certainly doesn't replace the other.
And let's just do maybe two more questions.
Sure,
We're running a little long on time.
A little over, yeah.
Could you briefly describe the process of e-reporting for community foundations that want to update their profile on Foundation Maps?
Yeah, so e-reporting is, so just to kind of set the scene here for Foundation Maps, we do get data from a couple of different sources. One of them is e-reporting, which I'll go ahead and define momentarily, but the other one is 990s. So even if foundations, if there are foundations who don't report their grants data to us directly, we try our best to get as much data from 990s as is available. So at 990s, if you're familiar with the sector, of course, 990 data means that it's going to be a little bit less complete, and it's definitely going to be more outdated as they are only available, they're made available late, a little bit later, 1 or 2 years later. E-reporting allows a foundation to reach out to us and essentially send an export from their grants management software of all of their grants data that we then clean up. Any and all identifying information that may be sensitive is removed, and we clean it up, we index it so that it fits into this philanthropy classification system, and then it gets loaded to Foundation Maps, and the very next week it's uploaded and it's live. Electronic grant reporting is something that we started a few years ago. It allows foundations to send their grants directly to us. They are more up to date. They are more detailed as well, so you can say more about your grant making that way. The way to do that, the way to get started is you want to email, I believe it's egrants@foundationcenter.org, but you can definitely email me after the webinar, and I can basically just forward your email to the eGrant reporting team. But it's going to be egrants@foundationcenter.org. But that's just how you get started. Yeah, a lot of grant making or grants management software companies work with us to to basically add an easy export to their software. So it might just be called Foundation Center Export or something very similar. So if you're the grants manager at a foundation, you can run that export. It's automatic, and then you just send us the file directly, and then we get started.
And one final question here from Maria. Do you have funding information from outside the U.S.? Question mark. Let's say community foundation is based in Europe.
Yes, absolutely. Because CF Insights, I usually, I work with primarily work with community foundations in the U.S. I did stick with that, but you can absolutely do that. So just to kind of show you very quickly, oh, hold on, there's a little bit of a glitch there, so let me refresh the page. If I want to look at community foundations that are located outside of the U.S., I could stick to world, use funders, and make the funder type community foundation. And now all of a sudden we have 2,000 funders around the world. There are definitely going to be pockets of funders because that's where the data is available, or the foundations there are sending them to us directly. But yes, absolutely. And you can go ahead and dig into a specific country by clicking any one of these, and then you can see the funders in Ireland, Community Foundation for Ireland, community foundations in Brazil, etc. I hope that answers your question.
Great. So that will be it for the webinar. If you have any additional questions or feedback, you can contact David at dar@foundationcenter.org, and he'll be happy to follow up with you after the webinar. Once again, we do have a recording coming out via email, which should go out tomorrow. So please look out for that, and you can send the URL to anybody who may have wanted to join that wasn't able to. And we thank you so much for joining us today. Dave, if you have any final remarks, go ahead.
No, just to say that I was probably speaking a little bit quickly at the end there because time moved very quickly. But if you want to email me, you can definitely do so at any time. If there are any questions that I didn't get to here, we're gonna take note of them, and I will follow up with you guys offline. But if anybody thinks of anything later, feel free to write me, and I'm more than happy to help. Thank you very much.